Hi, Theater Philadelphia fam. We are back with another podcast episode in the celebration of our seventh annual Philly Theater Week. Today, we are talking with some of my faves from Beacon Theater and about their upcoming production of Hatshepsut. Then I'm going to talk more with them about their own process, own journey to this production. But first, I want them to introduce themselves as individuals or collectively, just any way that they are coming into the space, but also what has led them to this journey. So, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Hey, Theater Philadelphia. My name is Lo Abdul Malik, and I am the director of Hatshepsut. I'm also playing Hatshepsut in the show as well.
Yes.
Period.
My name is Kurt Himmelberger. I'm the artistic and executive director of Beacon Theater Productions, and I'm the playwright and an actor in Hatshepsut as well.
And producer of the show.
Yes, yes. Let me tell you, this dynamic duo right here, Beacon Theaters has done such great work over the years. I can speak from personal experience in embodying a lot of community stories and providing that in community accessible spaces and centered spaces. So I'm very excited to be here talking with them. I know this work, Hatshepsut, has been a love project, a project over years. Can you talk more about the process of getting to this point of it being a part of Philly Theater Week?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, this play sort of came around for three reasons. One, I've just been a studier of ancient Egypt. Two, and maybe we can talk about this later, this play is all about erasure of history, and unfortunately that is so relevant right now in our time period. But three, I was actually talking to Lo, and she said that she's been acting for years and never was even in a play with a Middle Eastern or North African character, let alone got to portray a Egyptian character. And I was like, you know what? We should write a play and you should get to be a queen of Egypt. And that was really like the start of this process. Yeah.
That was a number of years ago. So you've been working on it for 4 years. So the really cool thing is that since that time, I've had the opportunity to play characters that are quote unquote close to home. So that's been a gift as well. But at the time I was like, what the heck? I have never, not once, been cast as like North African, Middle Eastern. I've never had the opportunity to kind of tell my people's story, you know? So so this is really exciting.
You may have seen Lo in Interact Selling Kabul or in her very more nominated performance of Wilma Theater's Kiss. Yes.
Period. Listen. It's what I love also is this conversation about when we talk about Hatshepsut being about this erasure.
Yes.
The lack of representation of Middle Eastern, North African characters in a lot of theater writing, but also in what's being produced as well, really sends me into a thing of like, oh my goodness, why is it that we are not looking to push this issue more? And as an issue, I say, what's the best way to advocate for these stories, right? And Kurt was like, I'm gonna write my own. I don't know what y'all talking about, but we're gonna write it.
Basically, that's exactly what it was. I feel like you would probably, I'm gonna let you share kind of your heart behind it, because I think you get really amped up about just what's happening.
We live as we probably all are too well aware, we live in an age of misinformation. Erasure of history is running rampant. We have school boards and politicians passing legislation to stop teaching of Black history, Indigenous history, which is all of our histories. So, this play and our talk back afterward is really meant to like galvanize the audience if you come see the show, to be like the importance of remembering our history, the how to continue to educate yourself and how to take action in your own spheres of influence. And even the other productions that we've been performing outside of Hatshepsut has all been around this theme of like, we need to remember our history. And if they're not going to teach it in schools, we have to teach it ourselves. Yeah.
And that's the thing about it, is that there are so many Black, Brown, Indigenous youth, Arab youth who are looking and are like, I want to see myself on stage, and not just these 4 plays that they consistently are repeating in our classrooms, right? Because if we read Race in the Sun one more time, I'm a scream. Every, say it's like, what are these new works and productions that we can provide to next generation to see? Hey, these are stories that need to be told, but not just the next generation, our generation. There are so many actors and artists who, every day we're in rooms where we're like fighting to tell the stories that are about us, and not also being tired of telling the same story, right? And the same boxed in story.
And some of it too, I'm gonna yes and what you just said, because yes to all of that. But I think part of it too is I never even knew some of these stories. Did not even know who Hatshepsut was. No clue. I did not learn about her until I was a actual 100% adult. Do you know what I mean? Like, these are not stories that I at all was familiar with. And Beacon Theater produced When the Truth Comes Out by Toni Lyons, who is she's just an incredible African-American writer, poet, historian. She's just the whole package. But what was amazing also, what was amazing is to also, so her play, When the Truth Comes Out, is a fictional encounter of 5 Black women civil rights leaders that we don't often hear about in our schools.
Daisy Bates, Ella Baker, Fannie Lou Hamer, Joanne Robinson, and Polly Murray.
Right. Which part of what I think was so beautiful is having people in the audience who are Black or brown saying, wait a minute, I never even heard of these people. Right? Or like, why didn't I hear about these stories? Like, why is it that we hear about the singular 1 or 2, but there's just such a wealth of, just a wealth of knowledge and so much history that I think gets overlooked.
Yeah. And what I love about that is the notion of, as a community ethnographer, it's very important to me that we do the work to bring that knowledge back into our community, and just to go out to say, hey, I found this story. Do y'all want to hear it? Right? It's something that is innate to us, indigenous to us as Black, brown, and Middle Eastern people, to like tell these stories and to be like, hey, I went out and I found this story. Can I express this to you? The art of storytelling is something that's tradition in our culture, right? But also has been a means to our survival, to our intellectual warfare. And when I say intellectual warfare, I say that in the most way of being honest about the state in which we are in, where we are screaming for a lot of the ends of genocides, the ends of not only genocides across the world, but in our very own communities, through educational systems, through different political systems, through capitalism. We're screaming, hey, this is not okay. And as artists, I think sometimes we get into this notion of, oh, we're just doing art. But art has always been such a political act. So to tell the story of Hatshepsut is a political act of like, no, y'all need a reminder of this ain't it. This ain't it. This y'all doing right now is not it. And this is what really, because we think about ancient Egypt, there's this notion of, this look up to the pharaohs, and like in a way that doesn't also give a very much background detail of the systems that were in play then, but were used for the betterment of community as a whole, right? And we're more community centered than we look at the monarchy now, or those kind of things like that around the world. Can we talk more about Beacon Theater's mission and creating this like affordable, accessible theater to support the telling of these stories? Yes. Right? Yeah.
So their mission is to reach emerging audiences through accessible, affordable theater that uses critical moments of the past to show the way to a better, more equitable future.
So how we reach audiences in Philadelphia, one, we don't have our own theater building, and we go out and we partner with community organizations or neighborhoods, and we perform the plays where we think the plays Want to Be Heard, where we're invited into spaces, and we do a couple things. One, we always have free pay what you can tickets, not just for Philly Theater Week, but because we don't want finances to be a hardship to anyone who um, wants to see theater. And we actually, the best part is when we do theater production, someone's like, this is my first theater show I've ever been to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we always have talkbacks after our production so that audiences have an opportunity to ask questions and learn from the artistic team. And we can also learn from the audience, right? It's an exchange. It's a communal, it's such a beautiful communal thing that happens. It's probably one of my favorite things where we are coming together, we're having these conversations, we're learning from each other, which I think is so beautiful.
And for this particular production of Hatshepsut, which looking back, it increases some of the extra logistical planning. But we decided to tour the production to 6 different locations because we also didn't want like traveling to be a obstacle as well. So we're going to Germantown in 2 locations, Manayunk, Roxborough, the Art Museum area, and South Philly, because we just want people to like not have any barriers to come see good high quality theater.
Right. So it's not only that the shows are free, but we're going to come to you. We're going to immerse ourselves in different parts of the community because that is part of accessibility. So I love Beacon's heart behind that is to make seeing high quality theater affordable and accessible, and for families to come who may not be able to afford to otherwise. And then for this communal aspect of just being in conversation together, right? Where you get to ask questions, you get to share your insights. And it's so beautiful because I feel like I'm always learning something new from the audience and those who are there sharing. And so it's definitely not one way. They're not just learning from the artistic team, but we get to learn from them. Anyway, so that's probably one of my favorite parts.
It's a beautiful part. I'd say a lot of times when we talk about the production of theater and there's this notion of the resource that we gather to do theater, right? And how do we sustain theater? And I had this recent conversation with a lot of different theater companies in a meeting, and I was like, how often do y'all center the community in your production planning? How often, do you take that action to say we are going to 6 different places, right?
Yes.
It's like to some people like, oh my God, that's crazy because that's a lot of emails, that's a lot of coordination.
Listen, they're not wrong. It is crazy, but it's worth it.
But it's so but do it with a community-centered heart.
Yes.
It will always work out the way it's supposed to work out. And it will always be supported in a more community-centered way, right? What I love about that is that it's saying, we'll bring it to you. It's not telling audiences, hey, you need to make your way here. It's saying, no, we will come to you, and please come join us, right? So it gives that opportunity, and it becomes even more accessible because we don't talk about geography and accessibility. We talk about how it's hard for people to navigate going to different spaces, and also how to go in different spaces that may not be as welcoming as we assume they are, right? Like the library or the First United Methodist Church. I'm looking at all these spaces, right? The Fleischer Art Memorial, little filmmakers, like these are Venice Island, right? These are spaces that are being open to the community to access in a way that the community feels welcome, in a way that we talk about with the different theater experiences. Welcoming community takes work. It doesn't it's not as easy as people think it is. Talk more about that, Kurt.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if there's like a theater company out there listening in and we're saying it's harder work, it is. But if you need like another reason to like get involved in the community and go out to the community, it also like just increases the people that like are involved in theater and your community. Because if we did one show in the same location for 10 times, I feel sometimes companies go through this like, oh, how are we going to fill up the seats, yada, yada, yada. But then when we partner with these organizations and do one show for the organization, we usually have sold out audiences as well. So it's just exciting to see that happening as well. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, yeah, understanding that abundance is not just in how many seats we fill up in the seats
Yeah.
and how much financial gain we get from it. Abundance is also how many more community resources do we now have to bring more theater? Because I'm sure these 6 places are like, all right, so what's happening next year? What we do? Like, what's the next production, Kurt? Let me know.
Yeah.
You know. And
Yeah,
how
we've had after When the Truth Comes Out. I mean, I can't tell you the number of people who came up and were like, not only what is coming next, but how do I get involved? Right? Like, because they're seeing underrepresented voices, underrepresented bodies, underrepresented stories, they're seeing themselves in the work. And the work of accessibility is hard, but it is so worth it. You know what I mean? I think what's difficult is like, this is not the sexy work. You know, this is the hard work. There's nothing trendy about it. There's nothing easy about it, but it is so worth it. And that's Kurt's heart and Beacon Theater's heart, you know, behind all of that is the fact that it is accessible, which is why we are going into all these communities, because it makes it so much easier for them to access. And to your point, it's also not as intimidating, right? They're coming into these spaces that are very communal and very, I want to say like low stakes, kind of non-scary spaces. And the hope is they can come as themselves, you know, just as they are.
And it's just lovely to see relationships building because yes, we can go in a community and more people can, do something silly like sign up for the Beacon listserv, but also people that from Beacon can come into the communities and learn and support what's going on. Like one of our locations is Little Filmmakers in Roxborough. And if you haven't heard about them, you have to check them out. They just are raising up young adults from the Philadelphia communities to get a leg up in like the film production industry and to give them internships and training and things like that to just like become artists in the film industry. And so just kind of neat to see the relationships go back and forth that way. Yeah.
And they're offering opportunities to those who might not have them otherwise, right? So it's so beautiful. Like it's just, yeah, it's been such a gift.
Yeah. And when I think of, I've been blessed in my artist career to have theater companies like Beacon Theater, and actually Beacon Theater, as well as like Power Street Theater, other theater companies that are so based in community that it becomes a continual connection and building, right? It's, how can I, if I'm going to this table, how am I bringing along these people to this table because I trust in this community that we're building and this future that we're building. Because I think a lot of times with the Theater Philadelphia community, there is such disparity in like the small theater companies getting as much kind of like rep and support and resources and grant access without being gate kept. And also the large theater companies wanting these audiences, but like not putting in as much investment in going to the audiences and developing program with the audiences and that balance. And then you have media like theaters in the middle who are like, I don't know which way I'm going to go, depending on the season, depending on the resources that are available. The ecosystem really needs to shift into the notion of what does it mean to be accessible, to be an open beacon, if you must say, to a lot of different communities that doesn't feel as if they are being put into a space where we have to act a certain way. We have to ask these only questions. We have to be and hear these kind of stories. This is the protocol, right? And that's what I love about, even When the Truth Comes Out, that production is such a testament to breaking the fourth wall, but also to opening conversations up that will last in households for generations.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me more about what is the vision, the mission? I'm loving the mission of Beacon Theater. What is the vision for Beacon Theater as we move closer to wanting to create even more community-centered spaces, more tours, because this is a tour, This is like, more tours. Where do you envision Beacon Theater being as a prominent part of the Theater Philadelphia community?
Yeah, some of it is we wait for the community and our wonderful board and to sort of figure out all of our next steps and where the needs are or what is the stories or the issues going on right now. So I'm not quite sure what will be happening in the world in 2027, but we probably want to make theater that responds to that as well. But we just want to continue what we have been doing over the past 13 years. It started with Georgina Bard, and 3 years ago, she retired, and I was honored to take the reins. And so we just want to keep going out in the communities, keep meeting the needs. Like even this year, while we talk about our two big shows, Hatshepsut and When the Truth Comes Out, we're doing other things. We're doing soon coming up in later April, we're doing a walking tour of Black history in Germantown. And so there's just like little things like that. So I think we just want to do more and more and more and more and more is my plan. Yeah.
I love this, and I'm here for the more and more and more. I'm here also for the notion of how we are making sure that we are supporting the work that centers the community, that centers the storytelling that needs to be said and to be told, but also that pays attention, right? I love theater that pays attention to what's going on, that reads the room, that answers the room back, Man.
Yeah, I feel like since I got involved with Beacon, some other theaters, I say this sort of with a wink, but some other theaters have been ruined for me if I just come and enjoy it myself and I don't like leave feeling like, wait, what am I changing about my life, or what should I do next? That was just like, and I know it's lovely to have entertainment, lovely to be immersed yourself in entertainment, but sometimes I just love theater that like makes the world a better place. Yeah.
Yeah, and to say it doesn't mean that it has to be. We sitting there listen to a whole history lesson.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're also listening to a history lesson has come to life. That is an embodiment. Because oftentimes, and to quote Nina Simone, like, what are we doing if we're not, a reflection of the times as artists? Like, what are we doing? Like, doesn't mean it has to be bad. Like I always say that too. Like that's an education lesson or this notion of highlighting Hatshepsut and her journey, right? It's not a boring ass history lesson, right? It's a lesson to say.
It's definitely not a history play. It's a dramatized, it's a play. There's comedy, there is drama, there's all the things.
Political intrigue.
All of it is there. It's just based on a true story. And I think for me, part of where I get really passionate is about also representation, meaning that when we do hear some of these stories, sometimes they're just completely misrepresented. So for example, everyone's heard of Cleopatra, right? We talk about her as just some homewrecker, beautiful bombshell who just, P.S. we don't use that language with Mark Antony or the men, but she's the homewrecker, right? But I think what frustrates me is that it takes away actually from their work. And so, yes, she was beautiful, but she was also an incredible leader. She was an incredible general. You know what I mean? Like she did her job well, and she also looked good. You know what I like? They're not exclusive.
Yeah, and for
Hatshepsut, it's the same thing, right? Where it's like, when they discovered her, it was by male Egyptologists who right away were like, whoa, if she was erased, it's probably because she was horrid, right? What a horrible human being. And it wasn't until female Egyptologists entered the picture who were like, time out. She was actually an incredible leader. She led them to prosperity. The country was safe. Their borders were secure. You know what I mean? But you don't hear that, right? So to me, it's just fascinating because, again, even when the stories are told, they're also misrepresented, right? So by the time that you hear about it, all of a sudden you're seeing your body, your shape, your culture in a very skewed sort of way.
So Hatshepsut, the content of the play is writing history, but also with representation of the actors in the play, because oftentimes whenever you see Hollywood representing Egypt, it's always white actors or light-skinned actors.
Mhm.
But ancient Egypt has such a long history. There was with black-skinned Egyptians. There was a country Nubia below Egypt. There was just
Mhm.
and it was in every level of Egypt, up to the pharaohs and the queens.
Right.
And so in our play, 5 of the 6 actors are Middle Eastern or Black because that is what ancient Egypt would look like as well.
Yes.
Yes, yes. And that's the thing about it. What I love also is this conversation that comes out of it, um, of what we deem misinterpretation comes in forms of the way in which community theater is publicized, the way in which it's pushed, the way in which it's given attention, right?
Mhm.
Because it's like, oh, that's that Black play, or that's that Middle Eastern play. That's that. I'm like, excuse me, listen.
Right.
You act like I'll go see Golden Age musicals and be like, why the hell? What is this? You know what I'm saying? And why is and that's always been such a irksome moment in my spirit is when I see such good theater being made
Yeah.
from these in the community theaters who are
Mhm.
saying we're telling these stories, and then it's like, oh, that's really cute that y'all doing that. You know what I'm saying? All
Right.
right, Theater X, do
Right.
your Malcolm X Park thing once a
Right.
year. Okay, vegan, do your little tour around. It's like, no, this work that is being done is what actually is sustaining, is more indigenous to what theater was created to be in the
Mhm.
first place,
Mhm.
right? To, theater was not always meant for these stage and these lights and this big set. Theater was come gather and let me tell you these stories on in the stone, in the grass, right? Imagine
Mhm.
this background. I think that is something that really grinds my gears, is that misrepresentation of our stories not being as needed to
Mhm.
be
Yeah.
told.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you happen to have a theater out there with all the big lights, make sure you're showing representation in your stories too.
Right. And I want to add to that Black and brown bodies should have access to any and every single human experience.
Come on. Because
That it can't be just, oh, well, it's an August Wilson play, so let's hire some Black folk. But do you know what I mean? Because that to me is just as frustrating, where it's like, you should have access to the full human experience. That's part of the problem. The part is making it so narrow that it becomes, this is a Black play, this is a Middle Eastern story. It takes away from the humanity, because truthfully, I hope you come and see Hatshepsut and are completely unnerved by the fact that something that happened 3,000 years ago is happening in 2024.
come on.
You should be disturbed by that. I'm disturbed by that. But I hope that you also relate to these characters. They're relatable because they're human beings. Anyway,
Come on, look. Listen,
I need to step back a little.
where I go back. Like, that's the thing about it. That's what I love about having these, conversations, is having to dive into the history behind how we choose. I think one of the questions I sent before this podcast was about why this play? Why this play now? And there are some theaters that may have a hard time coming up with that, because it means you got to tell the truth of why you chose this play, why you chose it now.
Mhm.
And what I love is when I have interviews like this, and I'm like, yes, tell your truth, because I know the truth, and it's good. It's a good truth. And by good truth, my philosophy teacher would be like, Sabrina, there are no good truths. But the good truth for me is the one that's honest and holds accountability for all of who is being a witness to this storytelling. I think what I'm hearing, what I love about Beacon Theater's mission, is this notion of accountability to the community. I think there are a lot of theater that is made, but that's not necessarily accountable to the community. Who are we? Why are we doing this show?
Mhm.
Who are we doing this for? Right? And let's be honest about who we're doing it for. Because if we're not honest about who we're doing it for, we're just playing people's faces, right? We're playing with audiences. When reality is like, the community knows when something is being done for them,
Mhm.
right? And not to use them, but to be in community with them, right?
Yeah. And to extend hope. You know, I'm hoping people come in and not only feel like they connect to these stories and that this is relevant, but I'm hoping that they also feel empowered and, like Kurt said earlier, galvanized to make change. That they can be change makers. They have agency in wherever their sphere of influence may be, that they have a voice. And frankly, they might have access to those spaces that I will never be able to have access to. So the hope is that we are moving this collective body, that they can galvanize and be encouraged to move with respect and love and honesty in the places where they're at. And frankly, as an artist who is brown, part of me is also like, I can't wait for the little kiddos who look like me to also see themselves not just in these stories, but to feel like, oh, I can do this, right?
Yep.
Like there's space for me here. There's, I have I don't know, like I have accessibility and I have a way to enter in. I think for so long, I didn't see myself represented. And two, when I did see myself represented, it was a complete stereotype. P.S. It's still something we're working on,
Yeah.
And so I feel like I hope that it moves them to see themselves in their full humanity and to know that, here are all these, they're not just underrepresented stories, but then you're also seeing these underrepresented bodies that you don't often see on stage. And the stories are incredible, so it's high quality theater. Yes, it's based on historical facts, but it's not a history lesson. You know what I mean? Like, this is dramatized. It's comedic. We've been really blessed in that when we've done the stage readings, the audience's responses, and Kurt, you can speak more to this, of like, it ends up shaping his work and how he's refined it for the last 4 years.
Yeah, it's been great to hear audiences gasp or to laugh. I'm like, oh, that part is funny too, and just really enjoy the show. And to throw a little love back at you, we love what you and Theater Philadelphia are doing, what your heart is. We see it as a community theater. I mean, even us being on this podcast right now is one of the thousands of things that are going on right now with Theater Philadelphia. So thank you for all the ways that you're literally changing the face of theater and for the better in Philadelphia.
Oh, thanks, Kurt. I appreciate that. I think it falls back to, we are only going to move forward together and in collective, and then working together and talking like we're doing now about the work that we're doing. And it makes it feel less like work. At the end of the day, I know we log up, we're like, I got some emails to send, I gotta talk to who, what, where. But at the end of the day, conversations like this inspire the work of Theater Philadelphia to be the continuing celebration, the promoting, the, downright, being that cheerleader for Philly theater, in a way that also is like, let's hold each other accountable in a major way, and let's continue that work, and make it less work and more necessary, right? An everyday thing that we are investing in for the future of our next generation of artists, who I think from watching this will be like, oh my God, I got to get on this bandwagon of vegan theater and try to see what's happening, So I really appreciate that. And I appreciate y'all for real, too.
Thank you. I just feel like there's so much good happening in the greater Philadelphia area, and it encourages me in my work, right? So you highlighting all the work that's done in all of these corners of this amazingly diverse city is so encouraging. And to your point, we need each other. We need each other. I go see shows and I'm just so inspired by my colleagues, right? Like, I go and I'm like, man, I love that. That just gave me so much life. I'm so encouraged to be a part of this community. So thank you for highlighting the little guys and the big guys and everyone in between. But I agree with you in that we need each other. It is, it does my heart good. There's some incredible artists in this community. I'm not going to list them all because we'll be here all day. People who, you know what I mean? Where I'm like, I am just so thrilled to see the work that's happening here. And I'm thrilled that people like you and Theater Philadelphia are highlighting all of this stuff because it's because there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good happening.
So much good. I thank y'all so much for coming and talking with me this morning.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
It's been beautiful. To anyone who's listening, Hatshepsut is running on its tour from April 4th to the 13th, Philly Theater Week. Like I said, you can go on theaterphiladelphia.org to get Pay What You Can tickets, or because Beacon Theater is already free of Pay What You Can tickets anyway, head on over to beacontheaterproductions.org as well. You'll also see a breakdown of the different locations where they'll be at, which are a lot of different locations, y'all, that will make it so accessible to join and to hear this story that is not a history lesson, but history come to life.
Yes.
With human beings and stories and themes. And it runs 90 minutes, which is, come on, y'all, do y'all thing. Head on over. And what I'm so thankful for is that Beacon Theater has come to talk to us about this process. I hope we see even more Beacon Theater as we move forward in looking at how Greater Philadelphia theater is growing. So Kurt, Lo, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.